Tom's going to come and just give a general introduction again in a moment. Then I'm going to speak a little bit about the history and heritage of the church and the mission of the church, very briefly. We're then delighted that our architect, Julian Clayton, has been able to join us this morning. He's going to talk a little bit about what is wrong with the Spire and what we're going to do to put it right, just very briefly. Alan will tell us about the update to the AV system. Roseanne's in charge of numbers, it says there. She's going to explain the sums, what it's going to cost, what we think it's going to cost, where we're hoping the money's going to come from. And then I will wrap up on the end with our response. So without further ado, I will hand over to Tom.
As many of you know, I came here about, it's 4.5 years. It's not long off, coming up to 5 years. And the church I was vicar at before was in North Bristol in a very modern estate called Bradley Stoke. And the church there was built something like, Chris, sort of maybe now 20 years ago, possibly even 25 by now. And it was a great building. It was fit for purpose, but it didn't have stained glass windows, and it was a very functional building. And when I came here, I was just knocked over by this place. Truly, this is a beautiful building. And one of the things we used to do, both here and my previous church, was get the kids in to do various drawings of the church as part of familiarisation with the church. And here they would draw the stained glass windows and they'd look up and they'd just be blown away. This building speaks of God. But what we're talking about here is not fundamentally, as I was saying earlier, about building conservation. Because our purpose and our mission here is that we are the people who are called to live out God's love. But of course, this building helps us to do just that. It forms our base of operations, and it, in its design and architecture, speaks of God himself. It is truly, if you'll excuse the pun, inspiring. This building is amazing. We have a need here, which you're all well aware of. And here, hopefully, if this is going to work, as I was saying in my sermon a few moments ago, we were thinking about the response in the Old Testament that the Israelites made to the need that they had there, to do what God had commanded them to do. And so it says here, and everyone who was willing and whose heart moved them, men and women alike, came and brought an offering to the Lord. This was everybody. As I said earlier, no one person ran a big quartermaster's store from which they could supply the whole of the needs of the tabernacle, but together they had enough to make it happen. And it's everyone who was willing. As we were saying, Christian giving isn't about twisting your arm, nor it is about performing that calculation in your mind, how little do I think I can get away with? It's about being moved and giving freely and willingly and generously. And it's giving to the Lord. Because this is his place and we are his people. And as we look back and as we sung the hymn, Lord for the Years, many of us can look back to many experiences of God and his call upon our lives within this very building. And we can give thanks for that. And so we do our little bit to make this a place fit for God's work here and especially in the future.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the history of this church. It was built in 1855 by people with a strong evangelical faith. They built it on an exposed piece of land, a little bit of hill, which was completely surrounded by fields at the time, and the spire made a very visual statement about the greatness and the glory of God as it hovered over what was then a growing town of Weston-super-Mare. I've learnt recently that, in fact, the boulevard in Weston was built deliberately to align up with the spire. I always thought it was the other way around, but Mary Armstrong came across a document recently, I think it was her father's, which made it very plain that Christ Church was here first, and then they thought, let's build the boulevard to line up with it, which is where it's been ever since. And the town has gradually grown all around it. Interestingly, when you approach Weston on the dual carriageway and come over Flowerdown Bridge, you are also lined up with the spire of Christ Church. I don't think that was deliberate, but it still makes a statement, doesn't it? Our church, our building, is part of the architectural heritage of Weston-super-Mare. We are still a strong evangelical church with a great desire to reach out to our community with the message of good news about Jesus Christ. There are lots of exciting things going on here. For instance, did you know that when Tom pulls his dog collar off, he's actually Superman? Bet you didn't. But more seriously, there are loads and loads of activities that are happening. You'll know some of them, but it's difficult for all of us to actually know all of them. Our link with local schools is growing, including the introduction recently of an after-school club being run in this building. Our children and youth work is thriving. It's great to see a number of our teenagers coming through to a real, living, personal faith of their own. The toddlers group on Wednesday mornings, huge, over 100 regular attenders. It's leading to some of the families now coming along to our all-together services and learning about the faith. Alpha courses, both evening, youth, and one that was linked to toddlers and may well go again in the future, are seeing the fruit. People are coming through. People are discovering Jesus. Our congregation is growing. That is brilliant. That is exciting stuff. If you put that together with some of the social groups, the men's group, ladies' togethers, craft groups, coffee mornings, all of these are great places for newcomers to get introductions into the church. If you combine all that with the popularity of Light Fest, Easter Fun Day, Holiday Club, all the Christmas celebrations, we are a very busy and thriving church. To continue doing all this good work, we need resources. And one of the most significant resources we have is our building. The building's in a tiny bit of trouble at the moment, as we know. The spire needs some urgent repairs. When we first discovered this, there were a number of suggestions about what we might do. One of them was chop it off altogether. It is a Grade 2 listed building. Unfortunately, that rules that out. Would cost us just as much, and it does look a bit odd, doesn't it, really? So the answer, I'm afraid, is we've got to repair it. And our architect, Julian, is going to come now and explain some of the problems that are wrong with it and how we can put it right.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me to come and talk to you today. I'm just going to give you a very brief guide as to what is required to repair the tower and spire. As you may well know, the quinquennial architects, B Squared, who do the survey every 5 years, identified significant problems with the spire and the tower that, if not addressed, would lead to rain and all of the weather getting into the building, and then that would lead to a much faster deterioration in the fabric. So whilst to all of you standing below, you might look up at the spire and think, well, it looks fine to me. I can't see anything wrong with it. And in some parts, you're right. There is no major problems, apart from one which I'll allude to, with the spire. It isn't about to fall down today or tomorrow or even next year. But if we don't do the repairs that I'm going to tell you about in the next 3 or 4 years, then the spire will become critically faulty and require a factor of 10 times as much to repair it. So this is really important that we get this done now to avoid a much bigger problem later on. Once we had the survey, some of you may have seen, we had the drone survey done, which is a new venture in architectural conservation, to use drones to have a look at buildings which are inaccessible, that allows us, without having to do either scaffold or get rope access. And it actually highlighted the areas that we needed to have a look at more closely. We then followed it up with a rope survey that gave us hands-on feel for the defects. And in principle, the main defects, it's more about 1,000 cuts to the fabric than large defects. And what we found was included. There are 2 iron bands within the spire that are inside the stonework, and these are ferrous metal bands that were rings that keep it together when they were constructed in Victorian times. And what has happened is the marine environment has eroded the joints, and water has got into the bands, and the bands are expanding and causing cracking around them. And that is actually one of the most severe problems, is that by expanding they're cracking the stone, and so if you let that go for too long, then the spire will start to crumble in earnest. All the other defects are of a similar thing about weathering. They're where the stone has been a bit weak, and we need to plug holes, or we need to repoint, and various things like that. These are the drawings that we've done to identify the location of all of these issues, and as you can see from both of the drawings of each side, it is extensive all over the tower and spire. And the main repairs are, as I say, the iron bands, repointing generally, then stone repair. We cut out and replace stone. The lucerne, which you might call dormer windows, are also needing a fair bit of repair. Some general cleaning. The sulfation, black staining in parts of the spire are rather unsightly and will ultimately cause corrosion. Those need to be repaired. The metalwork, you probably saw from a bit of a distance the picture of the spire, the weather vane. That is in some places very badly eroded, and the bell frame and improved access I'll come on to in a bit. But just to show you again, that's another picture you've already seen of the inside. These rods inside are fairly sound, but they are corroding, so they do need repair. And also you will see the white lines that you can see in various places are the joints, and where they've got a little smear on them, that's where the weather has come completely through and is dribbling down the inside, and we need to fill those and make sure that is all weather tight again. These show sort of parts of corrosion. You'll see open joints, and on one of the lucernes there you can see the vertical joints open. On the others you can see the pointing is coming out, and there's a little bit of plant growth. Again, open joints. This is the area where the metal band is, and those joints are not only opening, but the stone is starting to split. There's more joints, and you can see here the one on the left there is where the stone has just eroded by itself. We will cut that piece out and put a brand new piece in, and again on the hood of the lucerne there we will cut out that corner that's gone off and put a brand new one back. The roof, there is the tracery to the lucernes, you can see, is quite severely eroded in places, and some of the louvers have broken. The one on the right there, you can see the louver has broken. So all of that needs replacing. Previously, they put up a netting because some was falling out. So it is, again, one of the urgent things that needs doing. There's the sulfation I was talking about, the staining of the windows. That is not only unsightly, but it also starts to create an acid environment which erodes the stone. So from 2 points of view, it needs correcting. There you go. One of the methods we use to clean it is not what you can just wash it off with a spray over 2 or 3 weeks, just gently spraying on it, and it will wash off. But that often leads to more problems than you started with, because water starts to get into the fabric and causes more problems. So we're going to use a poultice, bit like a face mask that you might cleanse your face with, certain people, and this will just extract the sulfation and leave, won't let too much go into the building. So the last thing that is in need of major repair is the metalwork, both inside and outside the building. I don't know if you can see on the small inset photograph, you can see one of the cardinal points of the finial is almost eroded more than halfway through. We will do a weld repair and make it as good as new, and then treat the whole of the finial and make sure it's connected to the lightning conductor. We'll also be gilding the cockerel on the top, re-gilding that for another few years. So that in general is the main repairs that we're doing. We're also doing some improvements. The bell, I understand, isn't used currently because of dangers of either vibration and or the tower, the frame is in a poor condition. So we'll get a specialist in to assess all the necessary repairs and get that back in working order. Then a last item that we will be doing, as Tom said, he had great difficulty in getting up the spire. If he did, you can imagine how hard it was for me to get up the spire. So I'm a great believer in good access to buildings. It means people look after them better and can get to see problems greater. So we're doing some work on that, and that should help for future years in doing both surveys and maintenance. So if once we've done all these repairs will put the tower in good stead for another 25 to 50 years. And I like to think we are all, although this is your church and rightly so, you are also guardians of it for the future. So there is a responsibility there to look after it for future generations. And once this work is done, the tower and spire should be good for another 25 to 50 years. Thank you very much.
AV. Audio visual. In case you're wondering, it's what we hear and what we see. And in this church, it's not too easy to see sometimes, due to the restriction of the pillars. But removing the pillars is not an option unless you prefer open air services. So we have to work with what we've inherited in this building. The audio equipment is 25 years old. Most of us change our cars before they are 10 years old and send them to be reprocessed. Unless you're me, of course, some of you would know. In the world of electronics, the pace of change is even more rapid. Systems change and things become obsolete. New ways of doing things. Records were replaced by CDs, and now everything is stored in a system called a cloud, not the one that Tom was referring to earlier. Sales of CDs have dropped dramatically as a result. So what would a new audio system bring? The most obvious is new speakers, 2 at the front in each corner and 2 smaller ones towards the rear, replacing the 6 existing ones. The new speakers will give a much more improved clarity of speech. The existing loop amplifier, which is housed in the sound room, is the wrong type and always has been, so I'm told, by those who know. So a new amplifier would greatly improve the loop system. We do get quite a few complaints about people not hearing on the loop system. The new digital mixing desk has the capacity to memorize specific settings which can be retrieved at the touch of a button. This will enable personalized settings for each speaker to be stored, eliminating the need for tweaking and give a clearer voice amplification. New radio microphones with headsets will eliminate the loss of sound when the head is turned or less likely to be damaged. An independent sound and loop system is also included for the chancel area. There is also going to be new foldback speakers for the musicians and singers. Video. 2 new remote cameras will be installed to enable to show what is happening in the front on the screens for everybody to see. There is a significant problem when you've got youngsters down here that people cannot see further back. New screens professionally made to the widescreen standard format will replace the existing ones, together with 2 additional flat screens further back down the church on mobile stands. We thought long and hard about trying to improve the vision of this, and we don't think we can improve this existing setup, but we will enhance it by having additional screens further back. We are not proposing to renew the existing projectors at the time, but the system will connect via a cable HDMI. Those of you who have got audio equipment might know that's the most modern way of connecting now. And this should improve the picture quality which is projected. The new computer will be a tower type, enabling future updating more cost effectively. The mixing desk, the computer and the camera control will be housed in a mobile desk and will have a fold-down lockable lid. To allow more space for musicians and singers, the floor area where the keyboard is at present will be raised to provide a wider platform. This would also enable cable renewal to be carried out with less disruption. These proposals are the result of a small team of AV operators who have visited churches, talked to and obtained 3 quotes from different companies and consulted our musicians as well. My thanks go to the team for the time spent in preparing these proposals. Thank you.
Okay, so you've heard a lot about the what and the why, and I know the big question now is, and how much is that all going to cost? And so that's my job. And as you know, we were fortunate last June to, on our first attempt to get money from Heritage Lottery Fund to cover the vast majority of the expense that this is going to entail. And so this is the current idea of the budget. There's a slight caveat to this in that the actual repair of the spire, which is obviously the major bit of money, is still an estimate and in fact will remain an estimate. until the work starts and we find out exactly what's wrong. But Julian prepared a very detailed estimate, and so we're semi-confident that we're on the right track. And the good news is actually the estimates come in under what Historic England originally told it was going to cost. So we have a little bit of leeway. So so if we take the Spire repair and professional fees, that's about £207,000. The AV system is coming in at about £40,000. And a few other things, which I'll talk about in a minute, brings the total budget needed at £323,000. As I said, the good news is HLF will fund up to 70% of the cost of the total project. And at the minute, if we work that out on our current estimates, that means that they will contribute £222,000. But at the minute, that's a movable number depending on what the total cost is. We're aiming to apply for other smaller grants, and at the minute Penny Leicester's doing a sterling job of filling in several grant applications for much smaller sums of money, and we put quite a conservative estimate there of about £10,000 for other grants coming in. We can claim the VAT back, which is good, and so that leaves the nice round total for us of £50,000 we're looking for the congregation. Although the actual building and the project will go on for quite a considerable time, we have to put in a second application for HLF, which they call their second round process, in June. And it would be really helpful if we knew what the congregation contribution was, and if we could say we had £50,000, not in the bank, but promised, that would make our application much smoother, and we have to guarantee the shortfall in the funding with HLF, the 30%. So just a little bit about the HLF fund grant. As I said, at the minute we're looking at about £222,000 from HLF, but in fact they have told us that we qualify for £250,000. So that leaves us a bit of leeway. But that has to be 70% of the total budget. So as you see, there's a bit of a leeway there. This first year, which takes us up to the end of June, they call it the development phase, and they have so part of the grant covers that and the work that Julian's been doing. And the survey of the Spire, that's all been paid for. So HLF have given us £19,000 for that, or will have done by June. And the congregation out of the general fund contributed £3,000. Again, HLF insists that we contribute to that. They don't give you the full amount. So I say 70% of the project cost, and at the minute, we've got about £27,000, sort of, if things go up, which I'm sure they will. When the actual work will start, you'll see it's a bit of a movable feast, but we're sort of estimating probably nothing will happen until spring next year. We have a bit of a hiatus in that the second round application goes in June and then takes them 3 months to come back to us. And with weather and things over the winter, I suspect, and Julia might agree, that spring's probably a better time to start working on a Spire than the middle of December. So you mightn't see much happening. So I also want to make the point that we don't have £250,000 sitting in the bank at the minute from HLF. They only give it to you as we spend the money. It's not a full amount. So with all grants, there are some conditions attached. They're not too onerous, thankfully. This is a heritage lottery grant, and so one of the reasons behind it is to, in HLF words, to increase the opportunities for people in the community to appreciate the heritage of the building. For us as a church, we obviously want to encourage as many people as possible in, so it's a benefit for us as well. So one of the things that we have to do is write up over the next year or so, and we have to, by June, have a plan of how we're going to increase the access to the heritage of our building. And so we've some ideas at the minute. Certainly the work that we've already started on the War Memorial and the stories around the people recorded, we think is a really good example of how you could bring in some of the history of the building and involve the local community. We've got the history booklet, which we can update, and we can put some more stuff on the website. If anybody's any other ideas of how we can use some, and this is money, we will get money for this as well, how we can do some of this sort of stuff, or interested in looking more into the history, please do come and have a chat with me, because all the help is appreciated. One of the other things, which I have to say, Andrew from our diocese suggested, HLF are very keen that they have constant updates on what's happening with their projects, and he thought it was a good idea, as the vicarage is literally across the road from the church, that we mount a webcam on the vicarage roof and we film the process of what's happening. I have to say, I'm not sure how exciting it's going to be, but I think at the end of the project we can run a time lapse, a quick film of how the scaffolding goes up and down, I suppose. So that's something that we'll have funded as well. The audiovisual system is part of the HLF fund as well. They will fund up to 15% of any, up to 15% of the total grant that they give can be for capital improvements. And so the AV system falls under that remit, and that's why we've added in the AV system to that. And just the caveat to say that we need to, obviously, as HLF funded it, we need to publicise it, that we are receiving money for them, and at the end of the work there will be a plaque, which we will have to put somewhere, yet to be decided. That's all from me. I'm going to hand back to Chris, who's going to tell you how to give.
I am beginning to realise, after 32 years of trying to be a serious Christian, that periodically God challenges my pocket. I think it's probably right that that should happen. Because, I don't know about you, but I find it is so easy to slip back into a situation where I put my security in money rather than putting my security in God. So it says in Matthew 24, you cannot serve both God and money. And that can be quite a challenging statement sometimes to live by. But I'd have to say it has also been my experience, and I know it has of others here as well, of what we read in Luke 26, verse 38. Give, and it will be given to you. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So what do? Well, we pray. It's got to be the starting point always. We listen, and then we respond in whatever way we can. Now, I want to start by actually inviting all of us to review our regular giving to the church. That may seem a slightly strange place to start this morning. But the fact is, through last year, the church ran our finances, ended up with a £2,500 deficit. The budget for this year plans the same, despite assuming a 5% increase in our giving. So it's maybe an appropriate time of year, and as we're talking about money, can I just encourage us all, perhaps, to consider what our regular giving is to the church, and please don't think of diverting something from that into the Spire appeal, because the church has to keep running in the meantime with everything that is going on, and as you've heard, that is quite a lot. While talking about regular giving, just as a quick aside, I don't know just to publicise this, but if any of you do a lot of shopping online, there is a site called Give As You Live that you can buy through, which will actually donate to charities, and Christ Church is one of those. If you want any details on that, Heather Thomas is the person to see. She knows all about it and can fill you in on the picture. So, to move on to the Spire appeal itself. Before I get into the detail, there is something I want to say about that. As many of you will know, the PCC prayed and debated long and hard whether to apply for a Heritage Lottery Fund grant. They eventually agreed by a significant majority to do so. I think maybe that was partly because this is a listed building and it is clearly part of the heritage of our town. But I suspect maybe there would have been a strong likelihood as well that if we'd had to raise all 300,000 ourselves, it would have diverted resources from our principal purpose of making Jesus known to more people and in helping those who know him already to grow in their faith. So an application was made, and as you heard from Roseanne, we were very fortunate in being successful. But I know there are a few people who are still uncomfortable with this. And I do want to say to those that we totally respect your view and any decision you make about supporting this as a consequence. I hope we can lovingly agree to disagree. But we are where we are, and quite rightly, we still have to raise some of those funds ourselves. So how are we going to do that? Well, there's no way I'm going to tell you individually how much to give. That would clearly be quite inappropriate and ridiculous. 50,000 still seems like a big number, doesn't it, somehow? We could break it down and make it look a little simpler, £264 per person for the people in this church. But that is totally unrealistic. There's no way that is going to work, is there? For some people, they might be lucky enough for £264 to be small change. I'm sure there are others in our congregation who would dearly love to have £264 they could afford to give away. So let's be realistic. It doesn't matter whether you're contributing pennies or whether you're contributing thousands of pounds, and I mean those two extremes. As Thomas said, we can all join in some way, and as a particular supermarket says, every little bit helps. In the end, what each of us gives is between us and God. You can contribute just by praying. The whole project needs to be covered in prayer. Wisdom for the planning team, especially Julian, our architect. Safety for those workers who are going to be working up at the top of that spire. And for a satisfactory completion to the whole project. Thinking in practical terms, how do we give? Well, there are a few ways. Any amount, as it says, doesn't matter how small or how large. It could be in one-off donations, given as a lump sum, if you're able to do that. It could be easier for some people perhaps to give over a period of time, so much a month for anything between 1 year, even up to 4 years. We'd be quite happy with that. Or possibly just random donations, as and when you're able to, over the next year or two. Any of those would be perfectly satisfactory. They can be done through standing orders with the bank, or can be done through the envelope scheme. But however you were able to give money, if you are a United Kingdom income tax payer, please gift aid it. Gift aiding is such a valuable way of getting more money really for nothing. As you can see from there, we get back 25p in every pound. And at the moment, the value of that to this church is £19,000 a year. Really is very significant. So, as I say, if you pay income tax, please make sure that you gift aid anything that you give. For those who actually do make payments over a long period, obviously we need to cover the bills we've got to pay in the meantime. So it may be that some people are able to offer loans. that would be repaid at the end of whatever period you say, 1 year, 2 years, maybe up to 4 years. So that would be a valuable aid to us as well. If you're able to loan some money for a while, that will cover the cost of the gap that we have between some of the money coming in. Finally, and I guess we're all hoping that maybe this won't necessarily help the Spire project, but while we're talking about money, it's a very valuable thing to just think about a little legacy for the church in your wills. We only survived last year, actually, and kept our books in the black because we'd received a nice little legacy from someone. So they can be a very useful addition to the income of the church if it's something considering. So we thought we'd just tag that on the end while we're talking money here. Oh, well, we've got the gift day coming up, which you've been warned about, 3 weeks' time, Saturday the 22nd of April. The church is going to be open all day on that Saturday. It'll be there'll be times when you can just come in and pray if you want to. There will be times during the day where there will be some music and pictures on the screen and someone actually leading prayers. There will be publicity about that before it happens, so look out for that. But that's the principal gift day. It'll be followed the next day by a morning service of prayer and praise, and we anticipate that we will announce the amount that's been raised in the evening service on that day. You don't have to wait till that Saturday. If you've already made your mind up beforehand what it is you're going to give, it can come in at any time. If you have any queries or any comments about anything that you've heard today or anything else, then please speak to any of the team, any PCC members, feed that information in or those questions. You will all be given a handout, an Inspire news sheet, which Anna's just given me another one. We've got these at the back of the church. They're all named because we'd like to know who's got them and who hasn't, so that the people who aren't here, we can get them out to at a time. So as you leave today, please pick up the copy with your name on. They're all arranged alphabetically at the back of church. They will have in them both all the news about what's going on, but also all the details that I've just said about how you can give, ways to give, and stuff like that. So that will all be in the handout that you receive. The money that is given, it will be totally confidential. The only people who will have any idea what is given is Helen, our treasurer, and Dave Wilkes, who handles all of the gift aid scheme. If you wanted to give totally anonymously, you could. We won't be able to get gift aid on that, but that is an option if you would prefer to do that. So it is totally confidential. That really is the end of the presentation. The most important thing really is that we go away and pray about this. You've heard all that's going on. You've heard how exciting things are in this church. We need to carry it forward. We've been passed the church from previous generations. We need to pass it on to future generations. It's a growing church. It's a great church. We need to keep it together, and with God's help and with all of us pulling together, as Tom spoke about in his sermon, I'm absolutely sure we will.